everybody, and welcome. I am just getting everything ready here for you on this beautiful morning, Monday morning. How are you? I got my Gosa Bell right here. I have my Gosa mug. Let's see how today's coffee of the day is tasting. Oh, so amazing. So glad for you. Before I get started with this awesome episode about how to not overreact to negative people, I'm going to just do a few things. Make sure that while I do some of these things that you share this video, that you comment below. Let me know one thing. What normally triggers you? In other words, what gets you thinking negatively? Let me actually put it in a positive way. What gets you in a positive mood? For example, going out with friends, having your favorite food, or maybe sleeping and resting. Put in the comments below what gets you in the right frame of mind. So leave that below. It'll help this video to go viral, meaning we'll have one viewer. And then I'm going to be ready in just a few minutes to record this episode on my podcast. By the way, if you want to listen to the audio version of this episode, you simply go to davidtrigg.com/podcast or lifeofgosa.com/podcast. And you can then subscribe to my podcast in iTunes so you can listen to it on your iPhone, Android, wherever online, on my website, YouTube, wherever you would like to watch this. So let me just do a few things, and then you will hear some of my intro and some of my music, some of the things that I do to keep everything interesting. And then we will get started in just a few minutes, okay? So how are you guys? Leave a comment below. Let me know. Checking the stream here. So glad. Let me share the stream actually with my regular page, so we can have all of those great things going. Let me just go there right now on this lovely morning, 9 a.m. Good morning, guys. I like that. There it is. The stream is right there. Let me share that, and let me share that. Let's see here. Okay, share now. All right, great. So now that is being shared, then we will be on our way to great things, okay? Let me just check one more thing. Seems like the stream is frozen. Let me know if you can see the stream, if it's frozen on your end or not. Well, it might be. We'll see. Hopefully not. So as I said, let me just get a few things going and then we'll get started. You'll actually get to see or watch how I record my podcasts. And really, it's the same as these live streams. It's just I use different gear. So on your end, it wouldn't really look any different, but you might hear some of the different sounds that I use to make the podcast more interesting. So let me just check this really quick. Do a few things here. How are you guys on this beautiful morning? Maybe you're watching this after the fact. Maybe you're watching this when you're home. Maybe you have a break during the day. You might have a lunch break. You might be watching this late at night. Wherever you are watching, thank you for being here. So, okay, let me just check a few things here. Okay, there we go. Great. Excuse me. Let me get some more of my Gosa mug going here. I'm telling you, if you want my Gosa mug, by the way, you can't see it back there, but I also have one back there. Just go to my store, davidtrigg.com/store, and you can get your own Gosa mug. It'll be on its way. Okay. Let me check one more thing, and then we'll get ready. Okay, good. Okay, so you're going to hear my intro. You're going to hear a lot of just things that I do to get this podcast going. So just hang on tight. All right, let's do this. Well, everybody, and welcome. Okay, yes. I forgot that part. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually do something else here. So let me try it again. All right. Episode 245, How to Avoid Negative People. Well, everybody, and welcome to the Trigg Podcast of Joy and Gosa TV, where we are going Gosa. What? The weather's got you down. The brakes in your car, they don't even seem to work anymore, bro. You're looking at your wallet at that waistline, wondering, man, what is going on? Don't worry, my dear Gosa friend. Let's spend the next few minutes talking about grace, talking about joy, talking about God, talking about Gosa today. The Trigg Podcast of Joy. I'm here with my Gosa Bell. I want to talk to you about how to avoid negative people. Every one of us has people that just bring negative energy. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you say yes? Type yes below if you know somebody that just kind of puts you in a bad frame of mind. And unfortunately, it seems like God puts those people in your life to refine us, to make us stronger. But what happens often, this is what happens to me all the time, and this just happened to me this week, is that something in us gets triggered and then we overreact. And then, as the Bible says, we end up either returning evil for evil. Is that you? You end up fighting back in the moment. You're just quick, snappy. You're just right to the point. Or you end up running away and ignoring the thing. And that's called fight or flight. Or now I've heard it called freeze. So you might freeze. You might be, oh, that happens to me as well. I tend to be, because what I want to do is fight, I tend to freeze. I'm doing less of that, but I definitely tend to flight or to run away, which never works. Right now, I want to give you a few reasons why ignoring or fighting back or freezing doesn't work. The reason I have a few reasons is because first, it takes away your power. Your power is not in the fight. Your power is in being true to who you are. Your power lies in that you know that what you are dealing with, what you're talking about is true. But when you give in to somebody else's negativity or somebody else's problems or issues, it takes away your power. You may think that the problem is the other person, but in reality, the problem is you. And that's the hardest and the biggest lesson that I have learned, is that it's my response to negative people that matters, negative situations, whatever it may be. And so you have to be clear on when you give in to somebody else's stuff, it takes away your power. Number two, it keeps you from your destiny. It keeps you from the vision that God's given you. You may want to have a great family, buy a house, grow your nonprofit. But if you're giving in constantly to negativity or to fixing other people's issues, it takes away from your destiny. Your destiny is not to fix people's problems. Of course, you want to care, love, help people. Yes, we're all in the care industry, right? All of us, pastors, leaders, nonprofit creatives. But when you are constantly in a place of fixing other people's problems, it takes away your power and it keeps you from your destiny. And nobody wants to do that. So what do we do? Well, I have a few tips. Number one is be aware that your chemical response, that reaction that you have that's viral, that's visceral, is a trigger to your past. So when somebody walks in and says something negative, they write you a negative comment, or they just simply are just being an idiot to you, right? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? People do that. It's not them. As I said, it's not them that's the problem. It's your response to that problem. Now, knowing from experience, that response, whether it's fear, anxiety, shame, hate, violence, whatever that response is, or maybe it's an addiction, pornography, or eating, or shopping, or whatever, sleeping too long, too much, it's really you. So for me, my normal response, as I said, is either to be violent or to let fear take over. And the reason why that happens in my life is because of my trauma in my childhood, because of being away from my parents and not knowing right from wrong. And even though I love God and I have my family, my wife is my number one fan, there's something chemical, biological. Remember, this is not just you choosing to respond or to be triggered. It's something that you've grown accustomed to. So I have a friend who every time that, because he's unemployed and he deals with money issues, obviously, every time that anything in his life feels like he's being taken advantage of, even if he's not, even if that's not the reality, it triggers him back to that horrible place when he felt abused by a friend, by an ex-wife, by an ex-husband, or by unemployment or bankruptcy and the shame that goes with that. And so when this person here in 2018, on Monday, March 12th, comes into your life, and you overreact with violence or with hate or with depression or whatever, you're actually being triggered back to that event. Number two is you have to realize that the process out of that is possible, but it feels unnatural. The process of responding differently to negative people is possible, but it feels so unnatural because the wheels have been paved for hundreds of years, it feels like, to do what's wrong, to be in a negative space, in a negative place, what I call the no gozo cycle. You know what I'm talking about? The no gozo cycle is this thing that you're used to. There's trauma in your life, that's number one. You're triggered by something, that negative person, that comment, that thing that happened. And now you are in your spin cycle of I hate you, I'm anxious, I'm fearful, I'm gonna get fired, you're a horrible person, nobody wants me, whatever your acting out process is. And so you have to understand how hard, and yet it's possible, but how difficult it is to get out of this cycle because it's so normal to you. Now, number three, how do we then get out of that process? Well, remember, if it took you 30 years to get to this place, it's going to take a few years to get out of it. I've been in a process of learning from mentors and therapists and God and family for 10 years to get out of this process, and it still triggers me. I don't think the answer or the end result is to not get triggered. I think the answer is to respond better to those problems or to those negative people. So your ex-husband comes into your life, or your ex-boyfriend calls you even though he had an affair with somebody and now you're stuck with his baby. When he calls you, what is your natural response? To go back to, oh, I love you, I'm going to help you, I'm going to fix you, all is forgiven. Even though you know your truth and your destiny is to leave that loser, right? They didn't know what I'm talking about. So to respond differently, to respond logically is the hardest thing to do. And maybe some of us that are more empaths are more prone to be triggered back. I don't know. I think so. Could be biological, could be genetic. It's a gift from God to have those feelings. But the reason why it's easy to just get back with that guy is because you're used to it. Let me turn down the reverb here. I feel like I'm at Dodger Stadium, which I'm not. Let me see if I can do that here really quick. Let's see here. You might not hear it, but you might hear that echo in here. Well, we'll leave it alone. So I'll adjust it for the next podcast. So now, to get out of that cycle, of that no gozo cycle, or what I used also call the failure spin cycle. You're living on failure street, right? Anybody want to live on failure street? No gozo. Who wants to live on gozo street? Yes, all of us. So the third step is to get out of that spin cycle, you have to work against what feels normal to you. And this is what's so hard. So for example, for me, instead of fearing that the sky is falling, I have to literally look for people, places, and thoughts, or principles, as I like to call them, the 3 Ps, people, places, and principles, that will get you out of that, even though it's so unnatural. Let me say something. You're not going to get out of it on your own. You're going to need extra help. So first of all, people. So when I'm in I'm horrible, I'm going to get fired, I'm a failure. When I'm living on failure street, I have to call people. My wife, first of all. I have 2 or 3 trusted friends. I have a few people that just make me laugh. I reach out to people that I know are going to encourage me, because for me, my trigger or my trauma is that I wasn't affirmed enough when I was a boy. And I know it sounds like navel gazing or, oh, poor you, I should have a track. Oh, but I mean, it's real for me. And so what helps me is to know I'm amazing, and especially from people in power, because of a lot of things I won't get into. People in power, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, you have to know yourself, I've given them so much power over me. And so when they say something negative, if they're in power, it freaks me out. But then the good news is that if they're in power and they say something positive, it gets me out of that. And here's the good news. You can get out of that spin cycle in a matter of seconds. You can be living on Gozo Street in just a matter of seconds if you know what to do. So for me, yesterday, I had a really horrible day. Someone in power wrote me a text and it changed me. They said a few things that simply, and it wasn't something I was manipulating to get, or I wasn't trying to force them to say anything. I wasn't paying them, although I've thought of that too. Just here's $50. Please just tell me this when I get down and I'm in the gutter. You might consider that, maybe $1. But when I'm in the gutter, I reach out to people that I know, and then God is just good. Like this one text that I got, it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't something I was looking for. I didn't call that person. Just because God is good, he reached out to me. Someone in power using words of affirmation. If you know the 5 languages of love, words of affirmation is my number 1 by a million miles. Number 2, I said people, places. So let me go back to people. Who are those people in your life? That's my question for you, is who are those people? Do you have them lined up? It can't just be you. It has to be someone in your life. Remember, you're not going to be able to defeat this enemy. You're not going to be able to get out of failure street on your own. You're going to have to do something. People, places, principles. Who is that person? Number 2, places. So places is just a way to distract. What my therapist would call distract. Not addictions, not getting high, not overeating. Although a little ice cream sometimes doesn't hurt. You say, I love ice cream. You might want to go to a place. For me, is to drive along the coast and listen to worship music. I love being in the car driving by myself. Or it could be just with my wife, but no conversation. Because I've already talked about the problem for way too long. But what I like to do is to drive. So I did that last night. I went for a drive. Sometimes I like to sit by myself underneath a street corner. I've done it a few times. Okay, every day. No, I don't do it every day. Sitting alone, being alone, just decompressing. So literally last night I sat right on the steps of my church, and just the light, it was maybe 8 o'clock, it was dark. I felt so good. I went for a little drive. It got me centered once again. So what is your place? Maybe it's your room. It could be your car for a lot of people, right? It could be that you go to church. Maybe it's a restaurant. I'm not against you eating. It's just don't overeat. You might just want to go to a movie. I thought about going to a movie last night because I love movies by myself. I remember my mom would tell me the same thing, that when she was dealing with some anxiety and some concern, she would go see a movie by herself. If you are an introvert or an empath, like most of us are, being alone. Now, if you're an extrovert, first, you're probably not listening to my podcast, but if you are an extrovert, people obviously are going to be your big thing, right? Number 3, we talked about principles. Principles deals with the verses from the Bible, the truths of God, the things that are true about you. Even though, well, let me put it this way, because what you're believing when you're living on Failure Street is what you would consider a truth. Even though it's a lie, it feels like a truth, right? Can you say, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. Even though it feels like a truth, it's actually a lie. So you have to replace that so-called truth with an actual truth, meaning the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now, let me say something to you. Even though I'm a pastor, I love Jesus, I love the word. The Bible and verses don't do it for me. To me, the Bible and scripture is something that I do every day as an overall healthness, or wellness, as an overall wellness to my life. But when I'm in that gutter, in that crucible, the principles that I need are what I said, are words of affirmation. So the principles, even though I know that the Lord is my light and my salvation, and I have these verses, Psalm 27, it's one of my favorite ones. Psalm 8, I have it on my arm. Who am I? And yet I sit with the stars. And this is what you have to learn about yourself. If you have a verse that just gets you right back to Gosa Street, then obviously go to that verse. But that's why I call it principles, not verses. For me, they're principles. There are certain things that, of course, are God-given, spirit-given, that are unique things that I need to hear from certain people at certain times. And so what is your principle? For me, there's no doubt. The principle or the phrase that I need to hear is, Trig, you are amazing. You are an overcomer. And I like it when it's specific. And there's no doubt, your sermon changed my life. And if you're in power, it's times a million. That's for me. What is it for you? What is your principle that you need to hear from your husband, your wife, your friends, someone in power, whoever it is? Learn all these things that I'm telling you. It's not just anyone that you need input from. Obviously, your pastor, your friends, yes, your mom. If it is your mom, tell her exactly what to say. Send her a text and have her save it. Say, Mom, save these words. Save this exact phrasing. I want to hear these words. And guess what? Don't do it when I ask you. Do it every Monday at 6 p.m. because Mondays, maybe for you, it's the worst day of your life. I don't know. For me, it's usually Sundays, Sunday nights. So that is very important. So my question is, what is that principle that you need to hear? What is that verse? For you, it might be a verse. For a lot of people, it's verses. Psalm 23, Psalm 27, Maybe it's Romans 1. Get clear on what those words, those magic words are that will change you. Now, give yourself time. I'm convinced, and from all the studies that I've made, that a panic attack usually lasts about 10 to 12 minutes. Well, I think that our cycle of failure, living on failure street, at least in my experience, it takes about 3 to 5 days. Sometimes, to be honest, it's taken me as long as 3 months when I was less educated or less aware of what was going on. Because when you don't know what's happening, guess what? You think that you're right. Everyone does hate you. You are a failure. You need to go and fight back, right? Because you're so used to that response. So it may take a while for you to have the tools and listen to podcasts like these and go on YouTube and talk to a therapist, a spiritual director, someone that knows, to get out of that cycle. Because being on failure street, living on failure street is so comfortable. And you know exactly what it looks like and you feel like it's just what I do. You have to realize that spin cycle is powerful. But you have to know even more than that the living on Gozo Street, Gozo, by the way, means joy. Living a life of joy, which really just means a life with the spirit. We're talking about the flesh versus the spirit, to put it in religious terms, right? But in case you're not a religious or a Christian person, I want to put it in more general terms. But it's the same thing. The flesh wars against the spirit. Spirit wars against the flesh. The same thing. I just call it living on failure street versus living on Gozo Street, right? Just because I love the word Gozo. Gozo, as I said, means joy in Spanish. And it comes from Galatians 6 and from Psalm 8, where it says that there's pain in the night, Psalm 37, that there's pain in the night, Gozo comes in the morning. And then Galatians 5, where it says, or Galatians 5, where it says that the fruit of the Spirit is what? Love. And then the second one is Gozo, joy. And so I've learned that Gozo, joy, is a weapon. It's not laughter. It's not fun. It's not your favorite meal or your favorite TV show. It's deeper than that. It's something that comes from the Spirit of God. It's the Spirit, and it's not just simply to have fun. It wars against fear. It wars against discouragement. So it's a weapon that God uses. Weapons of our warfare, what? Are not of this world. They are spiritual. Gozo, joy, is your weapon. And so I'm teaching you how to live a life of gozo when you're facing negative people or just simply negativity on TV, wherever it may be. So you have to get clear on who are the people, the places, and the principles that you need. But you have to, even before that, as I said, is to just know where you're at. Now, let me tell you a little bit of my experience, how I do this. As I said, it takes me now, it used to take me 3 months. It actually, just 2 years ago, it took me about 3 months to get out of this one negative cycle. And obviously depends on how heavy the attack is. Don't expect yourself to get out of something in a couple of minutes or hours, even if the assault was hard, was big. It's going to take you a proportionate amount of time to get out of the mess that you're in. If it took you, as I said, 30 years to be in this mess, it's going to take you maybe not 30 years, but maybe 3 years. You know what I'm talking about? To get out of this mess, for the Spirit of God to do His work in your life. So about 2 years ago, it took me 3 months. Maybe about, let me think, about a year ago, it took me about 3 weeks. So I'm not saying it's some sort of curve that you just get better over time. I think you can do that, but if you put in the work, it's like exercise. You're not going to lose weight just by letting time pass. If anything, what happens? It's the Newton's laws of thermodynamics, right? Is that what they're called? His 4 laws. Things get worse over time, not better. Just look at our bodies, right? Look at politics. So you have to work against nature, against the flesh, by the spiritual nature that is in you, if you know Jesus. If you don't, let's start with that. So last week, just over the last few days, it's probably taken me 24 hours, maybe 48. 3 days, let's just say 3 days. Some things only take me about 3 hours, maybe 3 minutes. I don't have a lot of 3 minutes. I'm not at that premium level yet. I'm not that good. And I don't really think, maybe, if it's something small, it might take me only 3 minutes to, quote, brush it off, right? People say, just brush it off. Have you ever heard people that say that? Just brush it off. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can brush things off. But other times, you have to give yourself some time and give yourself some grace to just heal, do the right thing, face the music. Sometimes, as it happens with me, there's some truth in what people say and their negativity. So even learning how to face your own mistakes, your own part in the deal is part of living on Gospel Street. Living on Gospel Street isn't blaming that person just with a smile on your face or God just somehow getting rid of that negative person. Living on Gospel Street does take some self-reflection and self-awareness. Because guess what? You're not perfect. Neither am I. We all need to be growing, but it's not as catastrophic as you make it out to be when you're living on Failure Street. So even acknowledging, you know what? Yeah, I could have done that better. But it's not, as I tend to do, I'm a failure, I'm horrible, I'm going to get fired, there's no return from this, you know, the sky is falling. And again, that's not coming from reality. That's coming from trauma. And then what trauma likes to do is look for evidence. See, I told you. See, I told you. See, this hurts. See, that hurts. See, my head hurts. I knew I had cancer. You're like, okay, you know, see, I have a ingrown toenail. See, I told you I had pancreatic cancer. I mean, that's anxiety, right? It makes no sense. And if you're not an anxious type, this sounds nuts to you, but it's how anxiety works. So you have to give yourself that grace to get back on track, heal, look for those places, people, and principles that can get you back on track. And remember, give yourself time. Ask God, Lord, help me just to be patient with myself. Have people check in with you in 24 hours, 72 hours. It may not go away, as I said, right away. It may take a few days. So in this latest episode of my being triggered, I did all those things, reached out, resting. I'm doing this podcast as a way to just kind of remember what my plan is. As I tell my kids, because they deal not with maybe the same things I deal with, but when they get into their fear cycles or into whatever it may be, they deal with negativity. The main thing I tell them, the quick fix, here's the quick fix for you. Have a plan, have a plan, have a plan. So yesterday I received a negative comment. Oh, you know, we need better preaching. You know what I do with that? I first ask who it is. And if it's a person that I know who it is, or I guess who it is, I don't really know, then guess what? I put it in its place. Oh, okay, well, that's that person. She says that about everything, everyone. What's the body of my work is people are blessed by my preaching. Just a few weeks ago, something marvelous happened. But when I'm in that trigger, in that living on Failure Street, because of fear in my past, I go back to that place of fear. But because of my work with God and with people and all these things, I'm able to, I would say I'd snapped out of that in about maybe 3 minutes, maybe 3 hours, I guess, to be honest. But there was another thing that happened. That may take me 3 days. I'm still getting it out of my body. And how do you know when it's out of your body? You just simply know. Because when you're in that cycle, what happens? You're anxious, nervous, you can't sleep. I mean, you're a mess, right? It's just simple to know. For me, I feel it on my shoulders, my heart palpitations, all the regular things. So yes, go for a run. Absolutely. Eat healthy, sleep, distract. But do the plan that I was mentioning, those 3 things, those 3 P's. Principles, places, and people. And as you grow, you will learn to overcome and to respond, not perfectly. This is not a race, but respond better to negative people. You will never get rid of negative people, negative thoughts, negative self-talk. It's just impossible. Like Jesus said, in this world, you will have many trials. But what? Be of good courage. I have overcome the world. What does that mean? Is that He is giving you the power through this podcast, through His word, through Spirit, whatever, people, to overcome. But that problem will be there for the rest of your life. You don't have to live in fear of it. You have to just recognize it, have a plan, have a take, as my friend used to say on sports radio, have a take and know what to do. Well, I hope, my friend, that these few tips have helped you. If you need my coaching, feel free to just email me, trig@davidtrigg.com, message me on Facebook or on Instagram, wherever you're watching or listening to this. You can also, if you want my more personal coaching, go to my page, lifeofghostal.com/coaching, and we can do a free consultation. And then if you want more ongoing coaching, we can set something up. But just go to lifeofghostos.com/coaching and we can get going. Thank you so much. My prayer for you today is that in whatever you do, you will know that you are more than a conqueror. Thank you so much. I will see you next time. Adios. All right, guys. Well, that concludes the podcast. You kind of saw what I do and how I do it. And I want to just see really quick here a few things. Thank you so much again, guys, for being here. And I will see you next time. Adios.